Hey there, thinkers. Welcome back to another episode of Critical Hit. My name is S.
And I'm Pin. And today we're talking about Disney again, but we're talking about good news for Disney. Well, good news, bad news, depending on what side of the aisle I suppose you're on. But this is that Nelson Peltz has increased his Disney stake. Of course, this could reignite the potential proxy battle that happened with Disney. Big war over there at the House of Mouse.
Ding ding. Let's get into it.
A proxy battle between Nelson Peltz and Disney is brewing for a second time this year. Of course, earlier in the year, at the very start of the year, ended around just before April.
Which he also doubled his net worth as well for the stocks.
So there was a proxy battle that with Disney at the time, and he had about 9.5 million shares or so. About 9.5 million shares. Now he's increased that stake to 30 million shares, so just over triple of what he used to have. Now that's valued at about 2.5 billion. Of course, according to people familiar with the matter. That makes Trian one of the largest, that's Trian Management, one of the largest shareholders in Disney. Owning about 2.5 billion. And so that was actually the same that Ike Perlmutter had back when and there was a rumor going on at the time that Ike Perlmutter and Nelson Peltz were coming together to do that proxy battle before.
Heck yeah.
So 30 million shares represents about a 2% ownership, thereabouts, 2% ownership of Disney. But if you have someone else, another 2%, that seems pretty significant.
It's called the loud minority.
But we're going to break down what that kind of means here. So as we go further in the article, that move comes less than a year after Peltz, of course, drops his initial proxy fight with Disney, and days after the company stock reached a 52-week low. And dropped below $80 there, about 78.5, and it's picked back up. Today, I can show you real quick.
I thought it closed at 82 or 81 today.
So it had a really good day today. So up 2% after Nelson Peltz is back in the game. So I'm actually a big believer in that the free market, the collective consciousness of people, is usually more right than an individual. And so when you see things like this happen, it used to be that Disney was going up when they would buy things. It used to be that Disney would go up when they would say they had more subscribers. When that all stopped.
We bought Fox, yay!
Well, at the time, Disney shares went up, absolutely. But now when they talk about divesting, when they talk about getting out of these markets, then their shares start to go up. So the collective consciousness, or the free market, is telling us something, and it's saying that Disney is maybe just a little too big, or got a little too big for his britches. I don't think that they went the wrong way. I think Bob Iger probably had the right idea, making this big conglomerate that is Disney, and putting so many things under its umbrella. But the problem was the execution, as it always is in things like this. And I don't think he did, let's just say it. They went a little crazy in their media, and their media, if they stayed out of politics, I think they would have done much better.
If they quieted the noise like they said they were going to do back in 2014.
Yeah, for the last decade, of course, they've been saying they're going to quiet the noise. But, if they actually did it one time, actually get out of the political war, your main market is families. Don't disenfranchise families. That's your main demographic. If you're going to do that, you're going to lose. You lose 50% of the people when you go any political spectrum way, usually, anyway, away from center. But if you're going to do that, you should have probably at least gone to the side that had your main demographic. But you know what?
It's neither here nor there.
Yeah, there's some really good case studies out there about how maybe they did right, maybe they did wrong. I'll leave that up to other people, I guess, to decide this in business school. But from my point of view, I definitely think that they did a poor business practice here.
Definitely the wrong way of going about it. That's for sure.
So let's get back into it here in the article. And the firm plans to push for multiple seats at the board this time, including one for Peltz, the people said. And earlier this year, of course, he only saw one spot for Peltz. So that is significant. How this works, so from December 5th to January 4th, that's when they're going to have a nomination window for new board members.
Which he's been trying to get on that board for quite some time.
Well, he backed off. There was some things that Chapek had some cuts planned. He had some content cut planning, and I think Bob Iger wasn't going to do it. I think it was Nelson Peltz that kind of made him do it by being an activist investor.
Yeah.
And just so everyone's clear, activist investor isn't a bad thing. Don't think of activism like you've seen it before. Activist investor is just someone who usually buys a very prominent minority stake, a very sizable minority stake in a company that wants to have influence on how it's run. That's basically the definition of an activist investor. So in this case, when you go to nominate or when you go to vote on who's going to be the new board members, every share gets a vote. Every person gets a vote that's a shareholder. If you have more shares, you get more votes. That's basically how it works. All your shares get votes, not necessarily you, more like your shares do. So if you own 2% of the company, that's a significant amount of votes that is going towards you getting a placement on the board. So in this case, he of course, when he backed off, when he only owned I think it was just under 10 million or just over 9.5 million shares. When he backed off of that, that was a significant amount less than 1% of the company. Now he owns 2%, quite a bit more.
Now he has a little weight to throw into there now.
Especially if his buddy Ike Perlmutter is back in the game. Nelson Peltz says what he does is, of course, he's an activist investor, but he'll find companies that aren't doing so well. Let's say going down the wrong business practices. And I don't think he is kind of a conservative if you watch him go, but he claims he's a centrist, and I think that's okay. But when he sees people going on the wrong, down the wrong road, down the wrong rails, he will be an activist investor in a company, and he will try to get it back on track. He's done it multiple times in the past. I think back from 2017.
The one that was from Tide.
Well, he did Procter & Gamble is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's it.
Where he originally lost the vote, but he helps get companies back on track. Because what he wants in the end is he wants to make money. Go figure. Shareholders are supposed to make that, or shareholders want the company to make money. That way the stock price goes up, value of the company goes up, and you make money too. That's how it's supposed to work. Crazy enough.
I make money, you make money, we all make money.
They care more about money. That's what it's supposed to be. Free markets. But anyways. So don't think of activism as Nelson Peltz as a bad thing. This is a very good thing for Disney, going back to doing what could make money for the company is what he wants.
It's all a good activist.
Getting budgets a little bit more under control, like Ike Perlmutter used to say he wanted really bad. And maybe, just maybe, he'll get rid of a lot of the political ideology being inserted into film because it's not making Disney money, and that's what he's going to want.
Yeah.
So as we explained it there, so if they reject Trian's proposal, the firm could nominate directors during the open window. And that, of course, was from December 5th to January 4th of 2024. So Disney, of course, didn't respond to the comment, but let's keep going here. So it's been nearly a year since Bob Iger returned as Disney's CEO. The company has struggled to make its streaming unit profitable and has announced other initiatives to turn its business around. And that was all the cost cutting it did. It wants to sell ABC, maybe get rid of ESPN. It's funny, like I said, the stock goes up every time they talk about getting rid of or divesting away from things. But it goes in talking about right that was open the door to selling some of Disney's assets. And after coming back, he realized the company is facing a lot of challenges, and some of them are self-inflicted, he told. But as much as he says he's going to quiet the noise and they've been doing the wrong thing, he just keeps doubling down. And he's the architect behind all these not so good business practices, let's say. And he thinks he's unstoppable. That's the problem. The hubris.
Yeah, he thinks that, I'll put somebody in here for a few years to take the blow and then take my seat right back and sink myself down this rabbit hole of awfulness that he's been producing for the last, 14 years?
Yeah, well, it wasn't always bad. Marvel, but again, a lot of Marvel movies, when they first bought them, they were already in the pipeline.
Yeah, they weren't...
And Ike Perlmutter used to oversee Marvel. What happened was he got into a spat with Kevin Feige, and he ended up being demoted over to the comic side instead of being in the media side. And when that happened, I think maybe Ike Perlmutter was the one keeping it on track a little bit because the movies definitely fell down in Phase 4. And so anything he was doing at that point would have been out of the pipeline. So when Trian launched its proxy fight in January, the firm had about 9.4 million shares. I said 9.5, pretty close. Of course, that roughly at 900 million, and Peltz had criticized Disney's 71 billion acquisition of Fox in 2019. Yeah, he way overpaid for it, Bob Iger. 71, like I've said before in previous videos, Disney was only valued at about 100 billion. So acquiring another company for 71 billion put the company so far in debt. I mean, tons of shares were given out, but also just a ton of debt. Why they're a little strained when they have to buy Hulu now in the new year, or they bumped it up. I haven't heard when they're going to finalize that, but I mean, I would want to finalize that before my shares go down to $68
I'm so
too.
happy they're doing this, by the way. I hope it tanks them, and I hope it's scrounge all the way back to the very basics at the beginning.
Well, honestly, I don't think that's, if you have an activist investor like Nelson Peltz come in and he can right the ship for them, and he's done it in the past.
Yeah, and he's supposed to do that. He usually comes in before he's saying you need to go bankrupt.
Well,
I can either help you. Or
I don't think he doesn't usually get companies on the brink of bankruptcy. He's not a bankruptcy attorney or anything. But what he is he gets companies back on track that could be making more money. So that's usually the big thing. So it's unclear if Trian has any specific operation ideas for Disney that Iger hasn't already proposed or has privately rejected. But, however, Trian released a slide presentation in January showcasing Disney stock underperforming and the activist fund owner track record of improving corporate valuation. So, of course, he's very interested in this. And when he did back off, but he told Bob Iger at the time, I'm going to be watching you. I'm going to be watching. He wasn't just watching, though. This is a smart man who bided his time and acquired more Disney as the price was decreasing in value over the last couple months.
Because I know you're not going to
couple years, really.
To do. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to take your spot.
You know, I really thought Disney stock was going to go back to about $68, $69. But this macro environment, this is where a macro shift could happen, where Nelson Peltz actually could come in and do something positive if he gets a positive response. So maybe it isn't going to go that low. Who knows? But in the end, I think this is a good thing for Disney. I think it's a good thing for the stock. And honestly, I think that Disney needs to have their feet put to the fire a little bit here. Not just Disney. Bob Iger needs his feet put to the little bit to the coals on this one. Yeah, I mean, he needs to move aside. He's not running the company correctly. I think at this point, he's got to start realizing it too. Everything's falling apart around him.
Is it me? Is it me?
No, everyone else is crazy. It's not
weird.
But good news, I think, for Disney. I think this is kind of that copium on the horizon here that Nelson Peltz could do something great. So the board doesn't run the company. The CEO absolutely does. And what the board's only supposed to have power over is... And not just who they appoint as CEO, but his package, how much he gets paid, is what they're really supposed to have over him. But really and truly, you got to make the board happy. And how you make the board happy is by making profits, because then you make shareholders happy. And the shareholders vote who's on the board of directors. So it's all intertwined.
Directors likes money?
It's all intertwined. Well, because that's how they keep their jobs. But that's all I got for this. I just wanted to say, I think this is great news. I think Nelson Peltz back on track. I don't think he ever really left. I think he was just biding his time, waiting to strike. And Disney never looked weaker than they did now in the last couple weeks. Perfect timing. This was their end of year, and we actually did this, or starts the proxy fight up again prior to them even releasing the financials. I think we can anticipate what those are going to look like on November 8th.
Yep, when Nelson strikes back.
With Nelson, I like it. But anyways, that's all I got. You got anything else?
No, I have nothing else to say.
Well, thanks for sticking with us till now. Let us know what you think. Do you think this is a good thing? Do you think this is a bad thing? Do you think Bob Iger was actually on the right path? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Happy to debate it with someone if they want to. But otherwise, we'll see you in the next video.
See you guys in the next video. Toodles.
Bye, guys.